Margaret. Oh, it's off the glove.
All right. What's up, y'all? Welcome to the Sin 76 podcast, hosted by me, Jacob Moreno, aka Sixer Country, with Hunter Simpson. Today we got loaded guest list. We got Dive, Mr. Crockpot, Kai Carlin of the USA Today, Sean Bernard writing for Clutch Points, and Austin Krell for the Painted Lines. So what's up, y'all?
What's going on?
What's up, guys? Let's go.
How you doing?
Hunter, you want to introduce yourself?
Carpa, you want to start?
Yeah.
On me? Hey, Carpa, you want to start?
Oh, sure. I'm Dives, Mr. Crockpot on Twitter. Thanks for having me on, man. Talk some Sixers basketball. I think there's a lot of reason for optimism going on around this team. Not enough optimism going on, at least on my Sixers timeline on Twitter. But thanks for having me on your debut episode, man. Let's do it.
Appreciate having you.
Mm-hmm.
Kai?
Well, Chris, because there really isn't any real reason for optimism, to be completely honest with you. Austin and I have actually had a conversation about the additions that they made and things like that, and I don't know if they got better. They got tougher. Did they get better? No, not really. They're kind of the same team. They just now are more physical. It doesn't really necessarily mean that the Sixers all of a sudden are better than Boston, better than a healthy Milwaukee. And if Brooklyn comes back with KD and Kyrie, and that roster on paper is way better than the one the Sixers got. So, no, there is no reason for optimism. Unless you believe Harden is going to all of a sudden become Houston Harden again.
Let's look at the starting lineup, the depth chart of Game 1 last year. Let's just take a look at that.
Wait, that was real? That was real? You were real about that? Kai, that was real?
Yeah, that was real.
Oh, shit. Okay. All right, fair enough. Who's pulling up the depth chart?
Oh, I'm learning about CPUs. You guys got it.
Oh, all right.
I love how Chris said he was going to pull up the depth chart, and then he doesn't do it.
I know. I thought he was looking for it right there.
No, I have not.
That's why I paused. Like, all right, tell me. All right. So let's think about it. Last year they started on opening night with Maxey, Curry, Green, Tobias, and Joe as your starters. Obviously, no Ben. Then you had Furkan Korkmaz as your backup point guard, which wasn't exactly the greatest thing in the world. And then you also had a rookie Jaden Springer and Shake Milton, who you never really know what you're going to get out of Shake Milton night in and night out. DeAnthony Melton is an upgrade. I will say that. DeAnthony Melton definitely helps that bench unit. I think Daniel House helps the bench unit a little bit. But it doesn't really change the fact that we're heading into this season, and the Milwaukee Bucks probably would have at least gotten back to the finals last year if Chris Middleton didn't get hurt. And then you also have to remember the Miami Heat are still there. And I know they lost Tucker, obviously, to Philadelphia. But the Heat always seem to find a way to be in the mix there. And we all saw what Jimmy Butler will do. So, I mean, me and Austin and I've actually had this conversation a couple of times. The Sixers are probably a better team than the Heat, like on paper. Mm-hmm. But the Heat have Jimmy Butler. And the Sixers don't. They used to have him, but they don't have him anymore. So that's kind of the difference in a lot of these games. And unless James Harden all of a sudden reverts back to even early Brooklyn Harden, like if you even go back to Brooklyn Harden even before the hamstring issues, Brooklyn Harden was a guy who was setting up teammates. He was having efficient scoring nights. He was understanding that he's not the same player anymore. There was like a couple of different things that you really able to have a ton of success. But when you go into this Philadelphia situation, he is on the wrong side of 30. He is coming off a bad hamstring. He says he's healthy. That remains to be seen. Obviously, if he is, the Sixers will be in a much better situation. But at this moment in time, on paper, they're probably like 4th or 5th in the East.
Yeah, it definitely was a offseason, like working the margins more than anything with all kind of the DeAnthony Melton, the PJ Tucker. They definitely got deeper, which I will say, like, I think is more of a positive than it's being spun to be, just because, like, we've seen this team be paper thin for so long. And now, granted, I don't think they're as deep as like maybe some also believe. But the real X factor basically is what James Harden's got. And I still have optimism just because I think there's like adaptations he can make to his game. We kind of saw him take a look in the mirror and deal with the contract situation. If he can look in the mirror and do the kind of the same things about his game, doing stuff like more catch and shoot threes, having some sort of mid-range game, attacking the basket, looking to score more so than draw fouls. There's little areas that I think if he improves in the margin of his game, I think drastically help the aspect of the Sixers as a whole. And also to the Heat point, the one thing I will say about that is the Sixers do have Joel Embiid and didn't for the first 2 games of that series. So I think that drastically changes if he's there for that. But I don't know. I see reason for optimism, but I'm not ready to be phoning in the amazing season yet.
I mean, I don't think we can say we're real contenders yet. We still have a lot of moves to make. But with the moves we've made, because we got tougher, we did get better.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we had no fight last year. We just had games where we gave up, even when we were up, our double digits, and we just let the lead go. I think having PJ Tucker and Joel Embiid crashing the boards at the same time is definitely going to help us.
Okay, but even to that point, even to Sean's point, they had Joel Embiid game 5 in the 2-2 series, and they get smacked by 40. So, like sure, you can point and be like, oh, they didn't have Joel the first 2 games, and obviously that's a huge disadvantage, not having arguably the best big man in the game. That in a top 5 player, regardless of position, like that's a huge hole. But they were able to battle back. It's 2-2. You go back to Miami, he looked terrible from the jump, and you lose. You get smacked. You get kicked in the teeth by 40 with your big man out on the floor. So to that point, and sure, Hunter brought up, oh, we're better because we're tougher. No, like PJ Tucker's 37. Like that's something a lot of people are seem to forget. Tucker is going to help. This is probably, outside of the 2019 team, probably the best starting 5 during the Joel Embiid era. But at the end of the day, again, you're looking at Chris Middleton coming back to the Bucks. You're looking at a Celtic team that just they now added a point guard, which is what they didn't have while also making the finals last year. So they went out and they made real additions. And obviously, if the Celtics now get Kevin Durant, like if they were to make a trade, for the record, I don't think the Nets trade Durant. But if they do make that trade and Durant goes to Boston, all of a sudden we're looking at Jason Tatum. Jason Tatum is Kevin Durant light. Then you've got the Kevin Durant player combined with a Malcolm Brogdon and Al Horford, who all of a sudden look like Al Horford again. And the Celtics are right back there. So, like, a lot of it hinges on whether James Harden can get back to who he was before. And there's no guarantee of that.
Yeah. Hunter, to touch on your point about the mentality thing, the thing I will say about PJ Tucker and what it does give me optimism is when we look at the Sixers team last year, they're so reliant on Joel Embiid's energy to a fault, to the point where, like, when Joel is locked in and playing his best and bringing the energy, the team kind of follows along with him. And the nights that he comes out flat, the team comes out flat. So I think having like another guy that brings the mentality, brings the energy should help. But granted, to Kai's point, like that's not necessarily a fix-all either. And the Celtics absolutely, I think, had one of the best off seasons across the NBA. And the Malcolm Brogdon deal, I don't think is given enough credit for that. Like, this is a team coming off the finals run, obviously, and got massively better and covered their biggest hole. So the Celtics, I do think, have won the offseason comparatively, but I do think the mentality thing will make a difference.
And to Sean's point, they're going to follow Joel's leadership no matter what. So no matter what PJ does, if let's just even say game 5, let's just say the roles are reversed. All of a sudden, PJ's with the Sixers. It's a 2-2 series going back out on the road, and Joel comes out flat like he did in that series, like he did in that game. They're not like all of a sudden PJ Tucker isn't just going to rally everybody and go. It has to be Joel. He's the leader. He's the guy that's going to keep this thing going. Same goes for James Harden. So, like, I think Sean kind of touched on it a little bit earlier. It comes down to Joel and James. It doesn't matter, obviously Tucker and House and Melton, they are good moves around the frames, around the edges there a little bit. But unless Joel Embiid and James Harden take their games to the next level, which Harden, obviously he's got a bad playoff reputation. Joel, even as a guy who he had 8 turnovers game 7 against Atlanta in 21. That's something a lot of people seem to forget. Joel has issues here and there too, which is hard to win in the playoffs. It's hard. Like it's not like you just snap your fingers and boom, you're champions. So they have to go through these trials and tribulations. But again, these are questions that they have to answer. The Bucks have already answered these questions. The Celtics answered a lot of them. They didn't answer all of them, but they've already been through the fire. The Miami Heat went to the finals 2 years ago, and they were a Jimmy Butler shot away from going again this year. So, there are all these teams in the league. And also Brooklyn. Brooklyn's obviously the big question mark because you don't know whether Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving are going to be back next year, right? So, but if they do come back, and if Ben Simmons actually picks up basketball, like the Brooklyn Nets all of a sudden you have to throw them in that conversation. You have to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Kai, I know you said earlier you don't think Kevin Durant's going anywhere.
Yeah, I don't think he does.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, who knows? That isn't like a source thing. It's just a guess.
Right.
But I don't think
Getting aggregated is too late. You can't go back now.
Oh, dang it. Damn it. I'm gonna get roasted all over Twitter now.
Right.
But yeah, I don't think they trade him just because it's like if you're the Nets and the Rudy Gobert trade kind of ruined everything because now the Jazz got so many draft picks for Gobert that now the Nets are like, all right, give us 15 draft picks and your top 3 players and your unborn son for Kevin Durant. So it's like all right, man. So you're asking for a lot, and a lot of these teams really I know the Nets actually hit up the Timberwolves. Vince Goodwill actually reported this, and the Nets were like, okay, give us Cat, Edwards, and 5 picks, and the Wolves were like, no, that's a lot.
Yeah,
that's a lot. And also, I think Richard Jefferson actually said this too, former Nets starter on NBA Finals teams. Jefferson was like, wherever Durant goes, the Nets are going to deplete that team of all their assets, right? As they should. It's Kevin Durant. So Durant may want to second guess and be like, if I could trade to a team that's not nearly as talented as the one I'm on right now, then what's the point?
Yeah, that's kind of what I was going to say is considering all that would take to get him, which you obviously need to hold a high bar because he's Kevin Durant, one of the best players in the NBA. And considering what the trade market looks at for guys like Rudy Gobert, like DeJounte Murray, you need to eclipse that to get the value for him. But considering all it would take to get him, there's no place that he would go and be in a better position to win than he is in Brooklyn right now, if assuming all those guys actually show up to play and they have a complete team. And the Nets really are the question mark is they could end up the number 1 seed next year, or they could end up in the play-in tournament. I don't think it would surprise me either way.
Right. The whole thing is just weird because on paper, they can come back next year with a starting lineup of Ben Simmons, Kyrie Irving, Joe Harris, Kevin Durant, and Nick Claxton. Mm-hmm. That's a damn good starting 5. Then off the bench, you're going to have Seth Curry. You're going to have Patty Mills. You're going to have who is the other one they re-signed? Day'Ron Sharp is another young player I really like.
Warren.
TJ Warren, Cam Thomas. So the Nets is on paper are a deep team. So if they bring Durant and Irving back, that's another one that I'm putting ahead of Philadelphia. So, and I think we saw that in March. When the Nets came to Philly after the trade, and what the Nets win by 40. It seemed that way at least.
A rough day.
It seemed that way at least. I mean, Irving and Durant made it look easy, which is why it's a shame that everything going on with the Nets. And Austin, shout out to you for your column about Kyrie Irving for our Nets Wire site. I think a lot of it does have to go to Kyrie Irving. A lot of it. Kyrie kind of ruined a lot of things going on, a lot of great things that could have happened there in Brooklyn. But again, if they come back with a healthy roster on paper, I'm picking them.
Thank you. It was excellent. You're right.
Yeah. See, I told I give you your props when you deserve it.
We talked about depth, but for all of you, how do you think it's important that we get a third star, or more so focus on getting bench depth?
I do think we've brushed over Tyrese Maxey a good bit here. And as much as for optimism, you can't kind of hope that he can replicate the leap he made from year 1 to year 2, because that was an astronomical sign of growth. A guy whose knock on him was as a shooter coming out of college to be the number 3 in the NBA in 3-point percentage last year is absolutely wild. But I do bank on him to continue to develop, and I do think there's something to the addition of James Harden, unlocking him as a scorer more. I think taking the playmaking responsibilities off his shoulders did a lot to free up him, allow him to play more natural. So I do have hope the continued growth of Tyrese Maxey will help. But granted, 21-year-olds aren't guys that take you to the NBA Finals. So I think we're throwing a lot on his plate as well. But to your point, I don't think I'm willing to sacrifice Maxey for a third star, I guess.
Maxey is a star. Maxey.
See, I would put Maxey on. Like, it's a shame that Bradley Beal just loves Washington as much as he does, because I would have traded Maxey for Beal in a heartbeat.
No thanks.
Just for we're talking about a 21-year-old, and he's an impressive 21-year-old. He's checked off literally every single box you could possibly think of for a guy 2 years into his career. He's been awesome, but he's also 21 years old, and he was another one. I think that game 5, what did he shoot, like 2 for 11, 2 for 12, something like that.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Like again, like there are just certain situations in the playoffs you would rather have an established third star. While Tyrese is going to be a star in this league, I have no doubt about it. You need a win now player. Like I put this out on Twitter, and I don't know if people saw it, but I mean, I would trade Maxey for Donovan Mitchell. I absolutely would. Like he's another one. Like he's just like, I think Mitchell's playoff numbers are like off the charts. Isn't he averaging like somewhere around 26, 27 points per game in the playoffs? Like that's a third star you need. That's a win now move. If it means sacrificing Maxey to win a championship now for the first time, and they won the last one in 1983. None of us were born. Well, maybe Chris. The point is, it's just like I really love Tyrese Maxey. Like I love his development. I love his work ethic. That kid is going to be something special. At the end of the day, you need a win now player because you're in a win now timeline. This isn't let's win in 3 years. So you got to win now. You got to win now.
But okay, my whole take on like the Donovan Mitchell situation is like everybody was talking about it like it would be Maxey for Mitchell straight up, which is just impossible.
No, of course not. You got to include Tobias Harris.
And probably more with the asking price that they were looking for from the Knicks. And it's like I would not give up that and take away more depth from us when we barely have any depth to begin with. So I'd rather focus on keeping developing Maxey and then focus on adding more depth to our bench rather than a third star. I think Maxey, he's going to be the fourth guy that's capable of averaging 20 points per game on our starting roster, which he did in the playoffs at 21, which is wild. But
all right, I'll step in here, and this is where yeah, okay. So I don't know how. I don't know how it's possible that they do a trade. They trade Danny Green. They get back a younger, more athletic guy. And they then add 3 free agents, technically. And they don't lose anybody. They couldn't. The only possibility is that at worst they've stayed the same or they've gotten better. They haven't gotten worse. You can't get worse because you didn't lose anybody. You're either the same or better. And I think and the whole the rest of the East, sure, the rest of the East shifts, right? But you have to think about what you did relative to the resources available. They didn't have enough money to add another star. They have James Harden. They added, you could argue, maybe the top role-playing free agent on the market, perhaps. There's no way this team isn't better. They're better. Like even if they're standing in the East, whether it be a 4 seed or a 3 seed, whatever, even if that's the same, they are a better basketball team than they were last season. And I don't think that's even a question. Like Boston is Boston, right? They're going to be good. They haven't gotten Kevin Durant yet. Mm-hmm. It sounds like they might get him. It has not happened yet. Milwaukee is very good. You know, we'll see how Chris Middleton comes back. We'll see if there's a little bit of, fatigue. They've made back-to-back pretty deep playoff runs. We'll see. Miami, I think, is notably worse right now. And Brooklyn, sure, Brooklyn in theory is very good. They have one guy who is requesting a trade, another guy who we'll see if he shows up to work on a day-to-day basis. With Kevin Durant, when players want trades, they almost always get their way. And Kevin Durant may be different. Maybe he's a guy that can't stand not to be on the court hooping, so he plays through it. But eventually he's either going to say, I'm in or I'm out. And if he's out, he's going to hold out eventually to get his way. And then they're going to fall apart. So the Nets, on paper, maybe they're the best team in the East, talent-wise. In terms of the synergy of their group, they are not the best team, and they are maybe a top 3, top 4 seed in the East. There's no way in my mind. I can't look at it through any lens and just see any angle where the Sixers haven't gotten better or a better team. Regarding the trading Donovan Mitchell, Tyrese Maxey thing, yeah, Donovan Mitchell's a better player. He has a more robust resume of success. He's put forth tremendous playoff series. He's also been really bad in games before. Maxey, to this point in his career, has been a more efficient shooter in many regards than Donovan Mitchell has. Donovan Mitchell is a much more high usage player. Donovan Mitchell fits not as well on the Sixers because he's a number one ball handler and primary option, and that wouldn't be his role here. Maxey fits so far. He has fit seamlessly into the third role with the Sixers. So conversation can't just be better player or not better player. It has to be fit. It has to be money. And do you want to? Donovan Mitchell is a very good player, top 20-ish player. Do you want to be on the hook for paying his max salary when you already have how many? You have Joel Embiid on a max salary. You have ostensibly, down the line, maybe James Harden resigns on a max salary. Who knows? That's a lot of money you're going to have in the works. And how are you going to add role players to that? The Sixers, on paper, you do that trade, sure. But in terms of the reality of the situation, which is you have to evaluate talent, you have to evaluate contract, you have to evaluate fit. I think it's a conversation. It's not an easy. I think there are meetings to be had in discussing where the team stands on that. I don't think it's a no-brainer. Same thing with Bradley Beal. 29. His defense has declined as his usage has gone up. He's a better catch and shooter in theory than the Maxey or anyone they could have. He's also going to be making $50 million a year, approaching 30. That if he gets injured or if he starts to decline, that's not a tradable contract. You're then stuck with paying a guy $50 million plus per year. He's a great player right now. I don't know what that looks like down the road.
Mm-hmm.
So again, money, tough there. I think right now, if we're being practical and economic, you have to look at this is a very finite group of people that you trade Tyrese Maxey for. Like Kevin Durant obviously is on that list.
Mm-hmm.
The top echelon of players is on that list. But I don't know that it's a no-brainer that you trade a guy who, for two players, Bradley Beal or Donovan Mitchell, neither of which is top 10 in the league, one of which at least is making $50 million plus per year. The other one is like top 20-ish in the league. I don't know that you want to be committing that kind of money and commitment to guys who aren't necessarily perfect fits or are pushing 30 and are making 50 million plus. So I don't know where that conversation is. I think it's not a no-brainer. But that's where I stand on the whole situation. And now I will shut up and let somebody else talk.
Could I go back to PJ Tucker?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so there's this narrative that he's this washed up player, and it's just not true. There's a lot of casual fans saying he's washed up. I don't know why they gave him that contract, but if the Sixers wouldn't, then no one else would have. And he just contributes so many things on both ends. Well, first of all, offensively, short roll passing, find guys in the corners like Maxey, Tobias. Then even when simply is when Embiid's doubled, kick it out to the corner, PJ could drain that three. Defensively, he can do so much stuff switching the pick and roll or just straight a point of attack defense on Trae Young like we saw, straight up locked him down. And he could even protect the rim, and if they want to do some small ball, he could play backup 5 as well. You have so many options there. You have Bassey, Reed, Tucker. It really depends on the matchup. But yeah, and as far as Boston goes, I think they're easily the best team. Not easily, but definitely the best team in the East. They got a true facilitator in Malcolm Brogdon who could help those three elite 3-level scorers on Boston, Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. Then you got that elite defensive front line with Rob Williams and Al Horford. So yeah, I think they're definitely up there. And Brooklyn, it's just a bunch of question marks. But on paper, I think they're right next to them. Then there's Milwaukee, who is just a better overall team than the Sixers, coaching offensively and defensively. So yeah, I think the Sixers definitely be the fourth best team in the East. And I think they have definitely gotten better with Tucker, Melton House, but I don't think they're contending good.
Yeah,
I
and
think I said Tucker was washed up. Who was saying that?
Oh, so many people in my DMs, on comments, even on the timeline, Twitter.
That's why I don't listen to people. People don't know what they're talking about most of the time.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, actually, that's actually a good conversation. That's how I always tell young Austin, stay off of Twitter. So, well, no, like
Great advice.
You will burn brain cells if you try to talk to people on Twitter.
no, absolutely.
You just don't do that.
Here's the thing about being
Yeah,
fourth.
I don't think PJ Tucker's washed up.
He had one of his best seasons. He had
yeah.
He's not washed up.
Literally came off
30 minutes a game.
Yeah, he's a very good player. Like let's not pretend that I mean, the only reason why I brought up his age is because, listen, at the end of the day, 37-year-olds in the NBA that's ancient NBA years, but he's still going to help. He's still going to help. But it still doesn't change the fact that I think Jacob touched on it. Milwaukee's still better than them, especially with Chris Middleton. I think we can all agree that if Middleton was healthy in the playoffs, the Bucks probably get back to the finals, right? I mean, am I the only one who thinks that, or
I don't know.
I agree.
Who knows?
Yeah, like if the Bucks had Middleton, then the Bucks probably get back there. That's a damn good team. Boston got better, as Jacob mentioned, and the same goes for on Austin about Miami. They're definitely worse on paper. They're definitely worse on paper. Yeah. But the reason why I brought the Heat up is because they always seem to find a way. It's just weird. It's just they always seem to throw their name in the conversation. But at this moment, the Sixers are better than them. But
Kyle Lowry's also a huge question mark with his health.
Yes.
Yeah, he's washed. He is washed.
I will agree. I won't say Lowry. I wouldn't say Lowry's washed. Remember, he had an injury. Injuries happen. It's not like Lowry's trash now. Let's not put that out there. Let's not start that. Lowry was actually very helpful for Miami. Again, just got hurt in the playoffs. I like Gabe Vincent though. That kid's good. But
remember that game?
Oh yeah, I forgot. Sixers fans and Gabe Vincent, they don't really go well together. Forgot about that. But I ask you guys this though, heading into this season, are any of you comfortable picking the Sixers coming out of the East right now though?
No. But guess what? Statistically, it's a very low odd proposition anyway. No matter how.
Did anybody have those expectations last year? Realistically,
I'm done caring about seeding. You get a ticket into your dance. I don't really care about the seed. It's the playoff. I think that's the mentality behind the roster construction they're doing. It's we've done the experiment where the Sixers had the best regular season and got the 1 seed, and we still didn't get anywhere. It's more I think the mentality for what this roster is building is getting guys that are playoff players, because it does change what works in regular season and what does in the playoffs. And also to the third star conversation, there kind of isn't a place for another star in the way this offense works. Joel Embiid was the second highest usage percentage in the NBA last year. James Harden's a guy who needs the basketball to work. We're essentially looking for a high volume role player, a guy that can catch and shoot, knock down threes, hit the shots, get his buckets when needed. And that's kind of what Morey's targeting with a PJ Tucker. Now, to circle back, the $1 million question is obviously if James Harden is that number 2 caliber guy. That's kind of the make or break there. But I think the Sixers kind of chips are already in the middle on that is the bet that they're taking.
I think the whole conversation about will you pick them to get out of the East. I think on any given year, unless you're the big 3 Miami Heat or whatever, or the Brooklyn Nets until it all fell apart, it's a very low odds proposition anyway, because it's a 7-game series. It's an 82-game regular season. The game is packed together. Injuries are more probable. It just gets lower odds as time goes on. I think even if you're a 3 or 4 seeded, guess what? You got to get through. The 1 through 3 seeds have to get through each other, right? So the Bucks got one way or another. The Bucks got to play the Celtics, so they got to play the Sixers. So everyone has a relatively hard path to get there. I don't think there's any easy way about it. There's no, I think there are favorites, but I think it's, no matter how you look at it, it's a low odds proposition.
Let me ask you this then: is this a make or break year for them? Considering Harden's like 1+1 right now, like is this kind of like got to be?
No, I don't. I think they bought themselves some time by getting PJ, because that was what Joe wanted.
I wouldn't say a 1 year, but I think 2-3 year for sure.
Mm-hmm.
1 year's a little bit of a stretch. I agree with Austin.
I think the make or break year has been like 6 years in a row now.
The Ben Simmons hole was so legit last year.
Yeah.
That I still give some leeway this season.
Yeah, I will say like last year, I'll give Doc Rivers a ton of credit for keeping that team together. Like considering the Ben Simmons stuff. Like I know Doc kind of gets a bad rep. Whatever. But
Did you ask the question?
I would, Austin. I would. I still can't believe that day in the press conference room.
That was a great day. That was something else.
that was fun. But I will say Doc deserves a ton of credit though for keeping that team together. Like considering that the Ben Simmons thing could have pulled that team apart. And Doc really did a good job of keeping them together. Unfortunately, it just came up short in the playoffs and the DeAndre Jordan thing. But I mean, it is what it is. But I look at this year, and I think they got maybe 2 years. I'll give them 2 years, and the reason why is because Boston to me is kind of like they're kind of primed to like run the East. Like if they for a little bit at least, if Tatum and Brown stay together, especially considering like they're still young guys. Like Tatum's like what 24,
mm-hmm.
and Brown's
24
26,
25. Yeah.
Yeah. So like that's still enough time to where like they can be at the top of the league for a few years. So I feel like if you're the Sixers, Harden's 32, Joel's 28. Joel's kind of entering his prime, but depending on injuries, you never know with him. I feel like they got like maybe two years.
I think you have until Joel says he's done, or Joel says I'm ready for a trade. I think 2-3 years from now, we'll be 30-31 anyway. You're probably on the downside of your window at that point in totality. So you're probably looking to trade him at that point anyway to get assets back and let him get a chance to the title so you can rebuild it anyway. Unless he just says, screw that, I want to be here forever. In which case, then he'll be here forever.
I want to touch on this the comment, and I agree. I don't see the Celtics. Like we've talked about the Celtics possibly getting Kevin Durant. I don't see them getting a deal done for KD without including Tatum, because they want Brown, Smart, picks, and then like another player, which I don't see the Celtics doing because they're not that dumb. And I also don't think they'd give up Tatum, even though Brown was arguably the best player in the playoffs for them this season, definitely the finals.
Mm-hmm.
And that tweet, though, by Jaylen Brown today, that might stir up some things in the front office. So maybe he'll be gone, but not for KD.
The thing that's so weird about the Nets situation too is, so obviously they've traded all their picks in the James Harden deal initially, so they don't have the option of like going back into rebuilding mode, because like getting worse and losing seasons does them no good because they're not their draft picks. So they're like, I think their package is especially unique because you have to get like players to contend now back in the deal. Like you can't just suffer for like fillers and a draft haul and then rebuild from there, because that option's not on the table for them. And the Jaylen Brown stuff, it's very interesting. I think he's like continually underrated by like Celtics fan base and Celtics even organization, because he's just always a guy kind of floated out in trade talks. And I really do like Jaylen Brown's game, so I think that's a shame. I don't know. I think the Celtics, if they want to pony up and pay the price, I think they have the assets to do it. But to do that, you're kind of sacrificing, like Kai just said, they're kind of primed to like run the East if they want to keep this core together. So to interrupt that for Kevin Durant is definitely a risk, even though you are getting like a certified one of the top 15 players to ever play the game. So it is a balance what they want to do with it.
Teams like the whole argument about like teams are gonna tell the Nets are gonna try to like dry you up of all assets in a trade for Durant holds weight when you consider he's on a 4-year deal still and he can't go anywhere. Like unless Durant says like, I will not go here, I will request a trade in a year again, whatever. They're gonna. I mean, that's the only way he can really dictate where he's going. and in that regard, like he can kind of control it. But the whole point of doing a trade for Kevin Durant is you're retaining some of your best pieces because he puts you in an immediate spot to win a championship.
Mhm.
And so I think teams are right to be steadfast in holding against, the inclusion of certain pieces. And I think anyone who's like debating the fit about Durant and Tatum, like, you can stop overthinking it. They're going to be very good.
Yeah.
And if the price is Jaylen Brown, who can't dribble, and Marcus Smart, who is like a suspect role player, or no, he's a very high level role player, but like decision making is suspect at times, plus some picks and like Derek White, who shot like couldn't make a three to save his life till the finals. Yeah, I think you do the trade. I don't think you look back. But by the way, we'll talk about the Celtics. Yeah, they had Malcolm Brogdon. Malcolm Brogdon has also had neck, knee, and back problems each of the past 2 years.
Yeah.
Those are for a point guard, for any athlete, those are not good issues to have. There's not good injuries to have. There's debilitating injuries. He's a history of being unhealthy. We will see if they've gotten better, but there's no doubt in my mind that if they get Kevin Durant, obviously they will be much better.
You know that I know. I think Jacob just put the comment up on the screen, and Austin and Sean and everybody. I kind of want to get their thoughts on this one. Most realistic return for Matisse Thybulle. Like, I know Mark Stein reported that the Dallas Mavericks and the Portland Trailblazers are the two teams that have the most interest in Thybulle. So I'm curious, like let's just say Reggie Bullock were to become available. Like, would you trade Thybulle for Bullock right now?
Oh, absolutely.
I think you need to include Korkmaz, right?
You probably have to, yes.
Yeah, so I'd easily do that. Yeah.
If you're gonna get anything of significant value back that isn't an underpaid guy on a rookie scale deal, you're gonna have to include Korkmaz to make that money work. And even then, you're looking at a range of like roughly 10 to 14, $15 million of you can take back in return.
Yeah. But yeah, regardless, I think I'd definitely do that trade. I'd even include a second round pick.
Yeah, I think the Matisse and Furkan for another role player has been a trade I've kind of expected all offseason. That's something that's kind of like has made sense to me for it to happen. I don't know if it's still going to happen. I feel like there has been like a lack of traction on it. Matisse is such just a unique player, and like I think the interpretation of him around the NBA varies like significantly more than your average player. I think there's probably some teams that still think very highly of him, and some that don't believe that he can contribute to like a contending rotation. And I think unfortunately that's kind of what the Sixers are finding out. I think he's incredible at what he does, but so limited in what he can do that it causes some real issues. And the thing that bothers me, I would say about Matisse, I've personally been in the camp of I would prefer to trade him and just get a guy that maybe isn't as elite in one area, but just more balanced, just because I think that's what the Sixers team needs. But I guess what bothers me the most about Matisse is like not the lack of progress, which is definitely frustrating, but I also think the defensive numbers get super inflated, and that I don't see his defensive characteristics translating to like the team success as much as I would like to. Like, I would rather a guy hard stay with his guy, play the right defense, than the come from behind trying to do the blocks and the steals. And I think it gets inflated sometimes, is my personal perception of it.
Well, I think Daniel House can kind of be that 3-and-D guy.
Sure.
Maybe,
yeah.
like maybe because House already has experience playing with Harden during their time together with Houston Rockets. I thought House was really good last year for the Utah Jazz. And he's not the defender that Thybulle is, but he's obviously a much better 3-point shooter, and he can play solid defense on that end. So, I've always kind of joked around about this. Like, the Sixers have always had a D guy and they've had a 3 guy. Yeah. Like in this case, the 3 guys Furk, the D guy is Matisse, but they never really had a 3-and-D guy. At this point, Daniel House can be that guy. I've always said if you combine Furkan and Matisse, you'd have a pretty solid player. But yeah, like I think right now, if you can get Reggie Bullock and like add to your depth and your roster at that point, then it would definitely help out a lot more than just having Matisse and Furkan at this point.
Speaking of, what do you guys think about the backup center position?
Leave it the way it is. Don't touch it. Let it roll.
Let the B-ball victory tour.
So I'm a little torn. Like, Paul Reed showed a lot of flashes in the playoffs. Like he showed a lot of promise, but he also fouled a ton.
Yeah.
Which like you can shore up your fouling problems as you get more experience in the league, and like that goes away. But just I'm curious. I wonder if the Sixers are just okay with just throwing Reed and Bassey out there, or maybe they go out and sign a veteran just for insurance or something.
Or you run with
Tucker.
That's what I was.
you run with PJ Tucker as your small ball five.
That's another one too. You can just put.
really
You can
match
just,
up
you can
these.
just put. That's another one too. You could just put Tucker there and just go small.
Mhm.
But like they have a lot of options. I think that I'm just very curious and very interested in seeing if they sign a veteran, like just for insurance, like if they don't really trust like Reed and Bassey like that.
Yeah, I like the idea of rolling into the season with what we got. I think you can always find kind of a veteran on the market, whether it be a Hassan Whiteside, a DeMarcus Cousins. Those guys still floating out there right now. Like for B-Ball Paul specifically, I'm a big believer in what B-Ball Paul can do. And the thing that I guess most intrigues me the most is all like the issues with him are so like fixable stuff. Like it's stuff that I believe like if he gets more time, he can work through it. Like you said, Kai, the fouls, the turnovers, the doing too much at times. It's all stuff that I think the more he plays, the more he can work through. And that was my issue with last year is like he didn't get a chance to do that. And then was just kind of thrown into the backup center role. Like I think if a full season of him like learning his role, learning what he needs to do, and things might look a little bit better. And I also think there's an aspect of Daryl Morey kind of playing Doc's hand for him in terms of like if he signs a backup center, the guy's going to play. So I think he wants to see a little bit what B-Ball Paul and Bassey are before letting that be an option.
Well, the reason why Reed didn't play much last year before the playoffs was because he showed that he really didn't understand like where he had to be on the floor in terms of offense, defense, things of that nature. So he had to earn that. So obviously Reed was able to earn that towards the end of the season and going into the playoffs. Like that was a really, huge development. That's huge for both Reed and the Sixers.
Yeah.
But there was a reason why he wasn't playing at the beginning of last year and throughout basically the entire season of about April. So
there's a backup center is going to have like a couple characteristics. One, terrible hands. Two, fouls like you can't believe. Three, virtually no lateral movement. And I think Paul Reed certainly checks a box off there with the fouling issue. We'll see about his hands, but I mean that's what you get with the backup center. Like the backup centers are going to foul. That's why they're backup centers, not starting centers in the NBA. And if you agree that Paul Reed's ceiling is probably a backup center, you have your backup center then. The things that matter are that he's typically strong with the ball. He's pretty powerful around the rim, and he can jump over anybody. And as long as he can jump over anybody, he can rebound and he can dunk. And that's all you need your backup center to do is set hard screens, open up, dive to the rim, be there for lobs. That's all you need.
He's getting that vertical up too.
That's right.
Speaking of, what did you guys think of the Summer League? Who stood out to you, good or bad?
They all sucked, really, if we're being honest with ourselves. But
Springer and Bassey especially.
Well, Springer is. We'll see how that career goes. Trevelyan Queen, I was not impressed with, and
Isaiah Joe.
Isaiah Joe was good. Mike Foster was good. Yeah. I did like what Malik Ellison brought. I thought he was like the only one that tried to play within a system offense, which is what the Sixers have, and I thought that was the most translatable to the major league club. So,
yeah, it's super difficult for these guys like in that setting because it feels like so many guys just trying to do too much, and it's like for all of these guys, their NBA role is not going out there and scoring 30 points. They're trying to put up a bunch of shots. It's like you're doing the little things. You're making the rotations. I agree. I think Malik Ellison did himself a ton of justice by sticking to that, doing that thing. But it's hard as like an off-ball cutter. I thought Charlie Brown Jr. had some nice moments. Trevelyan Queen, I like Trevelyan Queen a lot. I've liked him since last year. He impressed me as a passer more than I expected, but he definitely had some dumb moments as well. I think it's hard to evaluate based on that time. For Springer, he's so young. He's still very early in his development. It's defensively, he's there, but offensively, he's still got a long ways to go, and the handle concerns me a ton.
If he is 20 years old, he has done nothing to inspire confidence in the summer league. that he can be the guy. I think you're realistically looking at like a 1 year thing where if he doesn't show dramatic improvement, it's time to view him as a trade piece than it is a future, because you just don't have time. You don't have time to wait for him to develop into a playable asset in the NBA. Kai, would you agree with that?
100%. Like Jaden, I cut Jaden a little bit of slack just for the simple fact that he is so young. He's like 20, I think he turns 20 right before the season starts.
He could be a 5 NBA player when all is said and done. I'm saying that for this Sixers team, he has a 1 year-ish time frame before it's like we got to pull the plug because we're just not getting any value out of this asset.
No, exactly. I think Daryl Morey said it after, I think he said on draft night. He said, like, we want Jaden to be a part of the rotation this year. So I'm interested to see how he develops in terms of earning a rotation spot. But at this moment in time, Furkan Korkmaz is probably ahead of him on the depth chart, as is Trevlin Queen. I could probably make the case that Queen's probably ahead of him right now. So I think a lot of it's going to be played out in training camp. A lot of it's going to be played out in the preseason. But the preseason is another one where it's just like nobody really cares. Isaiah Joe shot 80, 85, 100% from deep during the preseason, only to miss every single wide open three he was able to get in the early part of the season. So honestly, in terms of those younger guys, I think Isaiah Joe is the one when you look at this current Sixers team where it's like, Isaiah Joe needs to actually take a leap forward. Like if we're talking about the younger guys, like this is going to be his third season. He showed he can, knock down a 3-ball and things of that nature. But I think Joe needs to be the one that earned the rotation spot this year.
I think he should probably get a look over Shake, honestly, because the fit with Milton will be semi odd because they're kind of the same player in terms of like how they're used and their shot creators. But I think Isaiah Joe will fit a lot better with him being another 3-and-D player who can, lock down the perimeter at times and space the floor, a reliable 3-point shooter off the catch, off the dribble, off screens. So that's why I think he should get a little more of a role this season than Milton.
Yeah, I liked what they did with Isaiah Joe shooting off screens. Like they ran a lot of those kind of plays in summer league, calling pin downs, letting him come off motion. That kind of like play, the shooting off motion especially, is something that this Sixers offense could totally use. And if he can be that guy, there's absolutely a role for him. But it's up to him to kind of prove if he can. And in fairness, like I don't think we have enough of a sample size to say whether he can or cannot yet. So I do think this is kind of a make or break year for Isaiah Joe. I think he's done the right things to put himself in the position to be in the spot and earn the role, but it will be to be determined if he can fill it.
I mean, I think if we just look at it practically from a money standpoint, Isaiah Joe is going to be looking at a qualifying offer next offseason. If he doesn't prove that he can be an NBA rotation player at this point in his career, maybe they give him a qualifying offer. Maybe they don't. Maybe they let him walk because it's just easier for their free agent pursuits. So I think in a lot of ways, this is absolutely a make or break year for him. I mean, and it's a shame because I think he could have had a better year last year, but he had some like very bad shooting luck. Like the ball was in and out on a number of his shots. It wasn't like he was missing badly. It was he was getting the rim and it was going in and it was popping out. So bad luck there. It's unfortunate, but it is what it is. And with him looking at with the Sixers looking at him potentially being a free agent next offseason, he certainly has the ball out.
Let's go around the league a little bit. I want to talk about two teams that are really interesting to me, Atlanta and Minnesota. So first of all, Atlanta, as we all know, got DeJounte, trade backcourt. At first, I was a little skeptical because of DeJounte's off-ball play, but if he could be used as kind of like a cutter at times, I think that would make things a lot better. But also, teams love to trap Trey like right at the half court. And with Trey being able to easily pass it to DeJounte on the perimeter, he could initiate like he normally does. And I think that's going to really help the Hawks offense. Mm-hmm. What do you guys think?
I think the Hawks pulled the trigger too early because they gave up 4 firsts for him.
Yeah.
They could have seen what the market was for Rudy and whatnot, and Donovan, and been like, yeah, we'll give you 2 firsts and some pieces, and you can either take it or you can get the hell out of here. So they definitely, you can't really blame them because who knows how news breaks. But I mean, if you're doing your due diligence around the league as a GM and as an organization, you should probably know what things coming down the pike, and that the trades literally unfolded like 3 days later. So
yeah, I'd be curious, like to Austin's point, like if they were to hold on to all those assets, and then the Jazz opened up with Donovan Mitchell. Like, imagine if the Hawks were to trade for a guy like Mitchell and put him next to Trey. Like, then I would be a little bit more wary of the Hawks in the East. But
They'd be dead.
yeah, just they traded Herder to Sacramento, which that's to free up space for DeJounte Murray. But I look at the Hawks and like, I'm just not sure. Like if Atlanta were to somehow capture the lightning in the bottle they found in 2021. And actually put it back to good use this year, then cool. But I'm not really sure, considering that when you look at the roster up and down, the depth, I'm not really sure about Atlanta. Like they're kind of like a 6, maybe 7 seed to me when I look at them, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's weird. Like, so when you're making decisions, everything should be built around what's the best way to optimize Trae Young. That's essentially what they should be doing. And I don't think DeJounte Murray is quite that guy. Like, defensively, I can see it a little based on like the long arms, bigger frame, can guard a little better, and I think he can help in that aspect. But the thing about Trae Young, he's obviously known for the deep shot, the 3-point shooting, but the most impressive asset of his game to me has always been his passing ability. And I think like having another ball dominant guy might not be the way to go with setting him up. But granted, both Murray and Trae Young both seem pretty bought in. They have a little bit of a relationship from the past, so we'll see if they can work through it. They're both going to have to figure out how to make some sacrifices in their games to make it work.
I mean, it's always weird when you put 2 passers together, and especially to be like their stars and the people that they're gonna have to rely on. It'll be interesting.
Now Minnesota is another really interesting one. I'm curious to see how it plays out. Obviously, you got Rudy Gobert, one of, if the not best rim protector in the league, but then there's also that weird fit with 2 centers on the court, like it's 1974. But I think Cat will have to be used as a facilitator, especially from like the post area. Maybe like hit Gobert for some lobs, or just as like floor spacer. But I think Rudy will be using a lot more pick and rolls, especially with like Ant Edwards. Creates so much rim pressure. But I think it will definitely be interesting. Curious to see how it plays out.
Yeah, I'm usually like anti Twin Towers, and in today's NBA, it's interesting how like the league continues to get smaller and they're kind of zagging while everyone else is zigging. But I do think this is the duo of big men that it could work. And I think Karl Anthony Towns is going to somewhat be like a spot up shooter as a power forward, which is interesting. But he's a career 40% 3-point shooter. He's one of, if not one of the best big man shooters of all time. And Gobert, obviously, defensively will make up for some of what Karl Anthony Towns lacks. How they match up is going to be interesting. Cat's still a decent defender. I do think it could work. It's going to be interesting. I think the real bet they're making is that they think Anthony Edwards is ready to be like that guy in terms of their perimeter creator, their lead guard. And I don't think that's a bad gamble to make. So I kind of like what they do. It's a swing for the fences. Interesting move for sure, but I'm curious to see how it works out.
Yeah.
I think it's very shaky. I think it has I think there is some boom potential and a lot of bust potential there, because Karl Anthony Towns is not the most nimble defender, and you're now asking him to defend power forwards because Gobert is a center. And I don't know that I can see that. I do think it'll work on offense, but I think defensively it's going to be like they'll get better, but I don't know that it's going to be enough to really catapult them into the top of the Western Conference. And like they gave up a lot of their depth to get Gobert. It was a swing, and it was a valiant swing. I just don't know that it was the right swing for them.
Yeah, I'm just interested to see how it's going to work out, just because Austin kind of pointed on it. Offensively, this Timberwolves team should be terrific. Like you're D'Angelo Russell, Karl Anthony Towns, Anthony Edwards. That's those are 3 guys who can put the damn ball in the basket. But defensively, Austin just said it. Imagine Karl Towns out on the perimeter trying to like guard like a 4 or switching onto a 3 on the pick and roll, something like that. It's going to be interesting to see how that works out. D'Angelo Russell's not a great defender either.
Not at all.
Yeah.
It's
So
very
I'm being generous there.
very generous.
Being very generous there. So I think right now, I think Minnesota's a playoff team, like for sure, which is awesome for them because they've only made the playoffs like twice in the last 16 years, 18 years, whatever it is. My math is off. 18 years.
18 years.
So like the fact that they're going to be a playoff regular now, it's a big step for them. Good for Minnesota.
All right, to wrap this up, I asked my followers on IG a few questions. The biggest one was, are the Sixers done with moves?
I don't think so. I think that I think Sean actually kind of touched on it earlier. They'll probably make one more kind of small, minuscule trade for like a role player. Like I can see Furkan or Matisse getting moved like for another role player, but that's kind of about it though. Like nothing major.
Yeah, I agree.
I think they left the $4 million and below the apron for a reason. That was a pretty dead giveaway for me.
Yeah,
and the
minor
16,
move.
and like 16 guys for 15 roster spots right now. I don't see them really cutting anybody. I think they're going to try their best to get a value. So I see some sort of 2-for-1 or maybe even 3-for-2 small deal around the NBA. I don't think anything. I think the major moves are done, but I think something around the margins to get another like playable role player is probably in play.
The second one was, will Tyrese Maxey take another significant leap like he did last season?
I think so. I think he could be an all-star this year. I think he can, and then that would put the third star conversation to bed. Like if he makes the all-star game this year, which I think he has a good chance, then there's your third star, like officially. But again, we'll have to kind of see what happens in the playoffs with him. But I do think Maxey takes another leap. The kid works his ass off. Like this is one of those guys where just like he's in the gym constantly, and as we all know, hard work pays off.
I don't think we'll ever see the size of a leap that he took again. Like I don't because I mean, how many more leaps can you take of that size before you're like a top 5 player in the NBA? I don't know that we'll ever see a leap of that size from him again, but I do think that he'll make improvements. He was like otherworldly sensational last season, and you could argue in a lot of ways he might have saved the future of the franchise, because I don't know that Harden wants to come here if it's only Joel that is doing anything. I don't know that Joel he's a future here if it isn't for Harden and Maxey. So I think you could argue in some ways he saved the immediate future of the franchise.
I think a few aspects to look at for Maxey's development is, first of all, his perimeter defense. He's kind of average defender. I'm looking to see if he can make any improvements in that aspect, and also his passing. Not to say he's already a good passer, but I'm looking to see if he can make some of those skip passes that we've seen other elite playmaking guards do. But yeah, so the last one was, sorry, the app crashed.
You're good.
Sorry.
I don't know if I was being so slow. Oh yeah. Will Thybulle make strides as the 3-point shooter?
No.
So that's the $1 million question with him. Sean already touched on it. I touched on it a little bit. Elite defender, obviously, one of the top defenders in the league. But I don't know if you guys noticed it. I feel like every time they play an elite team, like every time last year they played either Miami or Milwaukee or Boston or Golden State, any of those teams, they just did not give a damn that he had the ball at the perimeter. They just didn't care. They were like, dude, shoot. Like, go ahead. We don't care. So heading into his 4th year, like if he doesn't become a reliable 3-point shooter this year, with all the experience he has, 4th season in the league, there's very little chance that he eventually does develop into one at this point, because you do most of your development within your first 3-4 years in the NBA. So if he doesn't morph into like that 35-36% shooter from deep this year, I don't think he ever will.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I
don't know if that's true. Like Kyle Lowry developed very, very late in his career and became a star.
It's very rare that when a player does that. So Lowry was able to do that, but I feel like Lowry's more the exception, not the rule.
I think a reasonable goal for Matisse Thybulle is 33% from 3 and becoming like a very consistent cutter. Like if he can get
that's a big one.
If he can get up from like 5.7 points like he was last season to 8 or 9, I think that's a pretty good starting point. But I mean, I don't know that you're ever gonna. I mean, it might take him years to get to even just league average, and by then, teams aren't gonna grant him respect because it's just you're gonna sell out on the lowest possible. You know, you're gonna sell on sell out on the guy that is least likely to hurt you, and he's gonna be that guy no matter what.
And there's only so much you can do as a cutter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do agree with Austin though that like if he becomes like a legitimate cutter, like a better one, at least like a more consistent one, that's a big game changer for not only his offense but Philadelphia's offense as a whole. He's got to be able to keep moving and identify the holes in the offense and continue to go.
Yeah, I'll say the thing that discourages me the most about it is like the clear lack of confidence in it. Like you can tell like he doesn't want to shoot the perimeter shot, and he's always going to have open 3-pointers just the way like Austin said, they're going to be like pretty much giving him the shot based on the other options that the Sixers offense has. Like for a guy that he played more than 6 more minutes per game last year than he did as a rookie and had less 3-point attempts per game, which to me is very discouraging. And also he's a guy that spent 4 years in college and is now heading to his 4th year in the NBA. So like, I would like to have seen more steps in the right direction. Unfortunately, I just don't see him ever being like a true 3-and-D guy. He's always going to be lacking in the offensive end.
It's truly incredible how many guys, fans, and I guess media like will refer to guys as 3-and-D guys when they're either only 3 or only D, but they're not.
Right.
Yeah.
On the topic of Matisse Thybulle, the last question to end out the episode is: will he be a Sixer come the start of the season?
I'm going to go out on a limb and say no, but
I would agree.
I got no idea.
I'll say
what?
No idea.
I mean, I just think if they have a good enough deal, they just have to take it and package him with Furk or picks or whatever. And I think they want to still add more depth. And Tease doesn't have much value to the team right now because our defense was not great last year. So if we can get a better offensive player, then that can just help us overall.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I think if there's anybody that's going to be moved before that start of the season, I think it's pretty likely Matisse. I think Matisse is aware of that too. I think the Sixers there's a pretty wide margin for guys they would flip in terms of playable role players, and kind of what Austin just said, like a true kind of 3-and-D guy or they would take a guy that is less elite in either category who is more well-rounded, I think, in his place, and I think that's a fair trade-off to take.
Okay, well,
So I think that's going to wrap up the very first episode of the Sin 76 podcast. Thank you all for watching, and we'll be back soon.
thank all of you for joining, having a conversation with us too.
thank you.
Having you guys.
Thanks for having us, guys.
Yeah, appreciate you guys.
All right, have a great night, y'all.